Teamwork, make the dream work. I'm trying outside. Portofino, Daytona, or the spot of Ferrari. Talking to me, feeling like I need something that fly. YSL on her heels, cause she doing her job. Tears in her eyes every time it's goodbye. I like the finest of things, especially when I ride. 80 to the 580 in the old school mind. Professional.
Put money in the streets like a 401k, yeah. I'm a Silicon Valley with a silicone baby. Yeah. S-Corp, X-Story, it's a gang, it's a sport. Yeah. I be running.
Good evening. Welcome on into our signing day special here on KSLSports.com, the KSL Sports app. I'm Mitch Harper, BYU insider for KSL Sports. With me, Steve Bartle, University of Utah sports insider here on KSL Sports. We are going to unpack all of the angles over the next hour in this signing day for both BYU and Utah. Talk college football, look at the classes, look ahead to 2025, the transfer portal. So much to get to in this exciting time, Steve.
Dude, it's crazy. I love today. It's always exciting. You get to see the future of, these programs and what you get to look forward to over the next few years. And today obviously was a big one for both programs. And so it's there's a lot of exciting things to talk about with this.
Download the KSL Sports app. You can get all of our content from signing day. Make sure to do that and follow us on all the socials at KSL Sports, and follow us, Bartle KSL Sports and Mitch_Harper on X. And huge day. There's still a lot of excitement with signing day. I know a lot of people talk about, it's not what it once was. It's maybe a little bit more business-like, no longer referred to as letter of intent day. The athletes now sign basically financial aid agreements with the schools that basically lock in their commitments officially to the schools. What was your big takeaway coming out of signing day one in this early period for Utah, Steve?
Big takeaway, more of the same. With recruiting and with signing day, there wasn't anything noticeably different about how Utah went about announcing and welcoming their players. It was more the same, but for what Utah did, I think the big takeaway from this class was the fact that they were able to keep it intact, considering the season that they went through and all of that sort of stuff. Obviously, that makes it difficult when you don't have as much success on the field. It can make it difficult on the recruiting trail. So it's a big thing for Utah that they were able to keep this class together, because there were certainly programs coming after their guys. And so that's a big thing. And not only keep it together, but they've added 3 more to the class today alone, which all 3 were pretty exciting commitments as well. So, Utah is still chugging along the recruiting trail, which is a big thing for Utah. What about you, Mitch? What was your big takeaway with BYU today?
For me, when it came to BYU, it was a guy in BYU's class that I think could be an impact player, Steve, is LaMason Waller, Oak Hills High School, Hesperia, California, 6'1", 178, huge personality. He committed to BYU pretty early, but BYU's wide receiver unit's going to undergo a little bit of an overhaul. You're going to lose Darius Lassiter. Chase Roberts, even though he's a redshirt junior, he went through senior day, and it seems like he's kind of fixated on going to the NFL. He told the Royal Blue Collective a couple months back that his mindset right now is to go to the NFL, and that's where his head's leaning at the moment. So it creates an opportunity for some young guys like a LaMason Waller to step in and contribute. And Waller, tons of offers. And, I think that's always something that's a little bit of a benchmark. It's not the end-all, be-all. I mean, BYU just had a guy earlier this week announce that he's going to the portal, and Jackson Bowers, who had everyone up and down the West Coast and in the Southeast recruiting him, and he only played 5 games, and he's in the portal coming up on Monday. But still, it is a barometer that when you're a wanted commodity, you got some talent, and LaMason Waller's that, and I think he brings a lot of speed. Him, Cody Hagan, Tay Nakua's redshirting this year. So there's some young up-and-coming wide receivers. I think Waller could be an impact guy. Who's some other guys for Utah that you feel like 2025, they're going to have a chance to make an impact?
Keep it at the skill position. J.J. Buchanan was just a newly minted 4-star player. His story is remarkable, because he was an unrated, unranked prospect to start the year, and now he's a 4-star prospect, top 200 according to 24/7 Sports. His rise has been just remarkable to watch, and He has great athletic background, multi-sport athlete, plays football, basketball, a couple other sports, I believe. Tremendous athlete on the field itself, plays both ways, plays safety, receiver. He's coming to Utah to play receiver. Potentially, if he grows, if he develops, could move to tight end in sort of that Brant Keithy role. And so this is a big one for Utah because they're also going to be losing some guys from that wide receiver room. Need to replenish the talent pool in that room. And so JJ coming in has an opportunity to get going right away. He's a 6'4", 200-pound body, has the athleticism to play outside. If he bulks up, just kind of depending on how much he bulks up, that'll dictate whether he sticks at wide receiver or moves to tight end, potentially even moves to defense. I know Morgan Scalley would love to have him on the defense side of the ball, but Utah needs him on offense. Dynamic athlete, he can come in and can contribute right away.
You mentioned Brant Keithy, replacing him along with J.J. Buchanan potentially. Are there other guys that are currently in the program or in this class that you think could be that next Keithy? Because those are big shoes to fill. Yeah, those are big shoes to fill. Obviously, at tight end, you got a couple guys still in that room, Lennon King, Carson Ryan. Yeah. It's going to be important for Utah to hang on to those guys. Carson has been so fantastic for Utah. He's been a leader. The production isn't what anybody hoped it would be offensively for a number of guys, but he was snap in, snap out, putting in that effort, and he's going to be a guy that I think Utah would love to count on as a leader. Landon King, he didn't get as much opportunity this season playing behind Brant Keithy, but he's a guy, every time he's on the field, he makes a play through the air. So you hope that Utah can hang on to those guys. At receiver, you've got a guy in Zacharias Williams who was redshirting this year, forced into action, given everything, all the injuries and all that, and really showed well down the stretch of the season for Utah. Again, you got to hope that Utah can hang on to him because he's a dynamic athlete, really proved capable of doing quite a bit of different things, added some different elements to that offense. I think those are three guys that I think, if we're looking at who's on the roster, those are three guys that I think have the ability to and potential to step in for Keithy. He's Steve Bartle, Utah Insider here on KSL Sports. I'm Mitch Harper, BYU Insider. We're talking about the potential impact players for both BYU and Utah's 2025 signing day classes. Breaking it down here on the KSL Sports app, KSLSports.com. Wherever you're watching, we appreciate you hopping on board with us today. Another guy, I think, for BYU, and when I'm trying to identify impact guys, I either look at, they are just so talented that it's almost impossible to keep that guy off the field. One. Two, a position of need. And when you forecast BYU next year, a position of need to me is the defensive line because you're losing Tyler Batty, you're losing Blake Mangelson, John Nelson, Zay Banya, Logan Latui. Your top 5 defensive linemen gone due to senior graduation. They're all moving on. So it is a new look D-line in 2025. Who could be a sleeper in this group? And someone to me that I really feel could be an impact guy because of that position of need is Kendall Wall out of Mountain Ridge High School here in Utah, 6'5", 215. You hear that weight, he has got to add weight. That's a prerequisite. If he's going to be in the Big 12, he's probably got to add at least 30 more pounds to have a chance to play. But I love his speed off the edge. He's going to be in that edge rusher role. Kelly Papinga, I think, feels that there's a lot of potential, and they feel like they got a diamond in the rough with Kendall Wall. And to me, he's going to be someone. He had 13 tackles for loss, 8 sacks a season ago. Highly productive football player at Mountain Ridge. Kendall Wall, to me, is a name, and he's going to be someone comes in right away, going to play, ideally 4 straight years potentially for BYU. So Kendall Wall is another one for me. Last one for me, Racing Guillory. The big commitment that Utah picked up today. You can look at his offer sheet alone and kind of understand, why I'm highlighting him here. But similar to, the reasoning behind, your pick there, at running back, Utah's losing Mekhi Bernard. Jalen Glover already announced that he's entering the transfer portal. There's going to be an opportunity for a talent like Guillory to come in and make an impact right away. When you look at what he's done at Aledo High School, Aledo High School, that was really hard to say.
1,300 yards this season, 4 touchdowns. I think he's ran for over 2,500 yards in his career. He reclassified, so he's technically only a junior, but he reclassified to the 2025 class. So he cut a year off of his high school career. Similarly, Mekhi Bernard, he went through all 4 years of high school, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, but he was a year younger than his class. So Guillory kind of following in the footsteps of Mekhi Bernard, coming in a year younger than your typical 18-year-old coming into the program. And Utah has shown that, hey, we know how to handle, your youth and where you're at physically with your development. We can help you get to where you need to be physically. That's not a problem. He's 5'10", 5'11", somewhere in there, 180 pounds. So he's going to need to put on some weight. But Guillory has the sort of, the instincts that you love to see in a running back, just the ability to identify the open field, the shiftiness, the change of direction, the willingness to run tough and physical when he needs to. I think Guillory, given his talent level and the opening, with what Utah is losing at that running back spot, I think Guillory can come in and make an impact right away next season.
I want to hit on the top in-state talent from both classes. For Utah, it's Cyrus Polu, at least according to the 24/7 Sports State of Utah rankings. For BYU, it's Austin Pay, offensive tackle. Mixed bag results for BYU and Utah locally. Top 2 guys in the state, they go elsewhere. Jerome Miles from Corner Canyon, he flips from USC to A&M. Originally Ole Miss, then USC, then Texas A&M today.
Utah had a silent commit in there somewhere.
What could you say about Jerome Miles? You were covering his recruitment quite a bit.
Yeah, so this was back. So last year around this time, we were talking with Jerome, and he had Utah, Washington State, Cal, Arizona involved with him, and it seemed like, okay, yeah, this is going to be a pretty easy one. Utah felt good. There was a silent commit in there for Utah, and he gets going in the offseason. His tape starts to blow up. Some of his track numbers get out, and he blows up. And, Ole Miss, he took that visit out there to Ole Miss back in like April or March, committed to them on the spot. Utah stayed in that game. USC is able to flip him later on after he backed off of his commitment to Ole Miss. Jerome he's a talent. He's been injured, unfortunately, in his career, but he's a talent. He's dynamic. You hope that he can continue to put in the work that he needs to find success, because he is, he's got great potential to represent the state of Utah beyond, the college and beyond the college level.
Yeah, huge talent. Aaron Dunn, offensive tackle, once a Utah commit, he flips to USC. He did that kind of like on the field, on the hills of a game at Spanish Fork, like he was kind of doing fight on throw for USC. But Utah's number one is prospect in the state, Cyrus Polu. I remember seeing him as like a 15-year-old. It was on the hills of the NIL coming to be in 2021. So it allowed players what we thought was going to be NIL, where, hey, you can maximize your NIL, these college athletes, and go host a college camp. Yeah. And that's what a bunch of BYU players did. They go down to St. George, and they hosted a camp, and they wanted to find someone to be able that was good enough to they felt was the next dream prospect recruit, kind of an underrated guy. Well, it just so happened to be Cyrus Polu, and he became an absolute stud, 4-star prospect. What's your thoughts on Cyrus Polu and what he brings to Utah in the future?
Man, versatility. Love his game, right? He did so much in high school. Special teams, defense. He played linebacker, safety. He did it all. Played out wide. He can do a little bit of everything. So, when I'm talking about Christian Thatcher being that typical traditional downhill thumper type, Polu is a great compliment to a guy like Christian Thatcher, because he's got so much. He's got feel for space. When you were talking about dropping into zone coverage, he can make plays in the passing game. And he's dynamic, he's athletic, he can cover tight ends, he can get out on the running backs, he can do all of those sort of things. And for Utah, understanding his recruitment with Washington, BYU, he was a big priority for BYU. Arizona was also making a push for him, Arizona State as well, for Utah to hang on to him, to first get his commitment and then hang on to him. Despite, the season that they had, Polu was getting pressure from a lot of different programs, and Utah's able to hang on to him because they know how good he can be, for them, and just in general. He's a really good talent.
Austin Pay for BYU from Lone Peak, number 5 prospect in the state by 24/7 Sports. He signs with BYU, and you'd think, oh, it's a Pay. he was a lock to go to BYU. Not necessarily. Texas A&M, Oregon, a lot of guys in the mix for Austin Peay. He surprised a lot of people when he had a surprise official visit in June. Honestly, Steve, when in the summertime, I wasn't expecting Austin Peay to be a BYU Cougar, but once they got him on the last official visit weekend in June, that's when things started to turn, and BYU became a leader for Austin Peay. Obviously, the bloodlines with Connor Peay, current BYU center, but Austin might be the best of the bunch. 6'7", 295. He is going to be a special football player. It's just you're not going to see him until 2027. And then even then, coming back from a mission, serving for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, you might, lose 30 pounds, and it might take a full year. I've seen many missionaries that, come in as high school guys or, they're 285, 290, and then they come back after a mission and they're down to 240. And you're like, well, it's going to be a full year of, packing on 60, 70 pounds to get ready to play college football. So, but you love the length, the arms, the size, the hands. I mean, he's just got all the measurables for an offensive tackle. So Austin Peay going to be a good one, I think, down the road for BYU.
Yeah, he's got a great frame. When you talk about offensive tackles and how they project, to the college level and then beyond, he's got the prototypical measurements you look for. Those long arms, the length, the frame, all of it. He's a talent for sure.
Who's some sleepers, Steve, that you feel are some guys that maybe don't have as much run on Utah's class that you just feel like over time these guys are going to be some potential names to watch in this program for Utah?
Got two defensive linemen, Semi Taulonga out of Mater Dei. You look at him, you look at his profile. He's 5'11", 280 pounds. He's a low mid 3-star type of prospect. You're thinking, oh, who the heck is this guy? Why is Utah wasting their time on this kid? Then you pop on the tape, and my goodness, it is so much fun to watch. This kid is an absolute wrecking ball. He does it in so many different ways, too. He's not just, beating guys with power. He's not just beating guys because he's tough, because he's physical. He's beating guys in a number of different ways, whether it be off of the edge, from the interior, the three technique, over the nose tackle. He's able to do so many different things. So, Semi Taulonga, he's a dynamic force at that defensive tackle position, given his combination of athleticism, toughness, and technique. And then another guy along the defensive line, Carson Kafusi. He's not getting a lot of talk because he suffered an injury early on in his senior season, but this is a kid that, he's played offensive line for Skyline. He's going to play defensive line. During the offseason at these camps and up at Utah's elite camp, I know he impressed significantly. And just he has a tremendous frame, 6'4", 265 pounds right now. He'll get up to 300 pounds easy. Has the athleticism to be, equally as disruptive as some of these other guys. But he's a guy that really, really impressed with, his development and his taking to the defensive side of the ball. I think Utah fans should be pretty excited about Kafusi.
I have a feeling we'll probably get to senior citizen age and we'll still be talking about Kafusi's playing at BYU and Utah. So what's the connection there? Like what's the family lines there for Kafusi?
Oh gosh, there's a Jason in there. There's I don't know all the family. I need to do my Kafusi
I put you on the spot
tree.
there. I put you on the spot there.
Yeah, you did.
A guy that also was another camp standout on the BYU side that I think is a sleeper and is going to be a really good player. He's going to compete this year. Andrew Williams out of Kirksville, Missouri. His recruitment, when you brought up the usual suspects that were initially for Jerome Miles, Andrew Williams, BYU battled teams that are not typical suspects to compete for a BYU recruit. It was more the Midwest. It was Iowa State. It was K-State. It was a lot of these Big 12 programs, Ivy League schools. But 6'8", 280, he's kind of built like a Blake Freeland. And Blake Freeland went on to be a star player for BYU, now with the Indianapolis Colts. And to me, he's like a discus thrower, really good athlete, track and field background, dual sport athlete. BYU loves the dual sport guys. A lot of basketball players in BYU's class. BYU, like the defensive line, there's going to be some areas of need on the O-line when you kind of forecast for 2025 because you lose Braden Keim, he suffered that injury against Utah, but he's a senior. He's moving on. Caleb Etienne, he's graduating, losing his eligibility. Connor Pay's going to be gone. And you're going to have probably 2 spots potentially. And who knows with Waylon Lapuaho, maybe does he consider the NFL potentially? I think he's been outstanding this year at guard. So it could be a revamped offensive line for BYU. And I think, again, Kalani laid it out that they expect these 10 players that are coming in, whether in the spring and fall, and Williams is going to join in January. They're expecting them to produce and push the guys that are currently in the program to, battle for 2 deep spots. So Andrew Williams, I don't think he's a highly rated guy at all. He got a lot of buzz, though, from BYU's summer camp. He was an offensive line MVP, and that's where really BYU's recruitment took off. And again, it's a different speed than you're typically used to when it comes to BYU prospects, particularly out of state, because usually it was, they had some connection to, they had a friend that was LDS, and that LDS friend then told them about BYU, and then it got back to BYU, and they worked it for 2 or 3 years. This was a different scene, and Williams just really liked BYU's pitch. TJ Woods has done a really good job, the new offensive line coach for BYU, on recruiting, and the offensive line recruiting in this class was an area of strength. It was the number 1 position in my book for this class where BYU hit their needs. That they did a really good job, and Andrew Williams embodies that.
Yeah, no, that's great. Offensive line, when you're looking at how important that is in the Big 12, you got to have those big bodies. That was a big point of emphasis over the last couple years, was improving their talent pool in the trenches, right? Spencer Fano, Caleb Lumu. So, for BYU to make that point of emphasis, landed a couple of big guys in that class for sure.
Coming up on Monday is the transfer portal. So the signing day is going to have, this early signing period is going to go until Friday. And then early period will close. February will come, and I don't really have much expectations for the February signing period. That's become typically more PWO type of scene, but that might not even be much of a thing now because with the 105-man roster, I think for fans out there, that's going to be a new element. I think you and I are going to be tracking quite a bit. The roster construction around 105-man roster, BYU's kind of operating under the pretense right now of 85 scholarship, 20 walk-on. What's your kind of thoughts on the 105-man roster going from 123 to 105? It's going to be some trim downs where teams got to make some cuts.
No, it is, and that's going to be interesting to see how it impacts. I'm mostly fascinated how it impacts the lower levels, right? Because when you cut some of these numbers down at the top, it's going to have a trickle-down effect, and you're going to see some of these players get opportunities at these, a school like Weber State or Utah Tech, right? There's going to be guys that I think emerge that can then work their way back up the level. So that's, big picture view with that. I'm fascinated to see how that plays out. But it will be interesting. I know Utah, they're going to follow a similar model, 85 scholarships, 20 preferred walk-on types, and we'll see how that plays out. We're still seeing Utah extend those PWO offers. They extended one and picked up a commitment earlier today, actually a couple over the last couple days. So, that's going to be still an important element for Utah is finding those preferred walk-ons that want to come up, that want to compete, and have an opportunity at a chance at a scholarship.
Quarterback position, I think everyone loves the quarterback spot. BYU, they signed Nolan Keeney out of Tualatin, Oregon, 3-star prospect. BYU had some misses in the 2025 cycle, but they go to Nolan Keeney, and they really like him a lot, and he's going to be a mission-first prospect. Had some injuries in his high school career, and that's why I think his recruitment cooled down quite a bit. His junior year, where he was showing off his dual-threat ability as a runner, he suffered a pretty significant injury that caused him to miss a lot of time, but he's another quarterback that gets added to the quarterback pipeline, a name to watch. What's the quarterback situation for Utah moving forward from this class and going into the future?
Yeah, so with Utah, right, going to be a little bit different. Utah, this cycle, their first commit was Wyatt Becker. He got the ball rolling back in last November. He was the first to commit in the class. And then prior to today, the last commit that Utah picked up was Jamarian Bird Ficklin, out of Muskogee, Oklahoma, a lefty, dual threat athlete, could play a skill position on defense, could play safety. He has that sort of athleticism. Both of these guys are winners, and I think that was something that Utah wanted to focus on, was finding quarterbacks that are productive, that have talent, that can translate to the next level, but also have won. And Wyatt Becker led Sierra Canyon, throughout the CIF lower state playoffs, competing against programs like Mater Day and those sort of programs, survey, all of that. And then with Ficklin, he's won a state championship in Oklahoma. I think they were competing for another one this year. And these guys just have tremendous production. So Utah's bringing in two, really promising quarterback prospects that I think can come in right away and help improve the talent pool in that position. Kyle Whittingham has said we got to figure out the quarterback problems. Yeah. We got to solve them. We got to find answers. And adding talent to that room is a great way to find answers.
You probably get questions all about it all the time, but how do you feel about the quarterback situation 2025 and beyond? Like what are you looking at monitoring quarterback wise for Utah? Yeah,
it'll be interesting, right? So I think Utah's going to be a pretty heavy player in the transfer portal. I think there's a lot of talk, a lot of rumors. If you're on X,
yes.
You've seen them, right? There's a certain quarterback down south beyond the state lines. In the state of Arizona, there's a certain quarterback with ties to Utah. We'll keep our eye on him. There's rumors that he might enter the portal. We'll see. But I think Utah is going to be a pretty heavy player in the quarterback market this transfer portal cycle. That also means that there could be some action within their own quarterback room. I think Sam Hewitt is a guy that is probably going to look to transfer elsewhere. It didn't work out here. With Brandon Rose and Isaac Wilson being in the situations that they are. Brandon Rose being injured, that's tough for a guy to enter the portal and find a landing spot. Teams aren't typically willing to take a risk on players that are injured, so that'll be something. So I think it's a unique situation given the health of players in the room. Isaac Wilson is also dealing with an injury. It's not significant; it's only minor, but I think it's just a truly unique situation. And I think Utah is going to be pretty active in trying to fix that room.
Yeah, for BYU, it feels like it could be cut and dry with Jake Retzloff just being the guy. But at the same time, the way things kind of ended in November, BYU, there's a lot left to be desired. And I think that BYU, if they can get better, and I think what's always interesting with BYU in the portal as of late is they're going to be selective now. I think that 2 years ago, going into the Big 12, when they had 30-plus transfers, that was a bit too much. And I think they feel like that was lesson learned. We're not going to that level ever again. But if they can get better at any position and they can get someone, they are absolutely going to explore that. And I feel like they got to get another quarterback, BYU, out of the transfer portal because – and they're going to carry 4 guys on scholarship in this 105-man roster because right now you've got Jake Retzloff, McKay Hillstead, a former Utah State quarterback, Trayson Bourget, former Western Michigan QB. You've got Noah Lugo, a freshman out of Fort Worth, Texas, who they coined him as more developmental. Still got to learn how to kind of throw the football. And that's the prerequisite when you're a QB.
Kind of important.
You can be a great runner, but you got to throw that rock. So if you can get a portal QB to, again, make Jake Retzloff better and push and do that, I think you got to consider that if you're BYU and you're Aaron Roderick. But I think what will be interesting is how do they view McKay Hillstead, because do they see him as a future QB1? They always believed Jake Retzloff was a future QB1, and that's why there was always this feeling that he could always emerge as the guy and be the face of the program. What's their true feelings on McKay Hillstead? We haven't got much insight yet because he was always buried on the depth chart, third-string guy, really not getting any looks in practice, so there hasn't been much buzz on him. He was always the scout team QB. Oh, it's Kansas week. We're going to make him Jalen Daniels for the week wearing the number 6 jersey. That was his thing. But what can he be running the offense? Still to be determined. Yeah. And I think if you can get a portal guy, I think that would be a smart move for BYU at quarterback too.
It's interesting with the transfer portal talk. Obviously, we're talking about the quarterback position, but I think there's also a couple other positions for Utah specifically that they're going to look to address through the portal pretty significantly. Obviously, you're looking for talent at each and every position, but I think, for Utah, quarterback, to headline that, but I think they're looking for a transfer portal player at running back, at receiver, and then potentially, on the defense side of the ball, defensive end, maybe cornerback, one of those 2 spots. I think those are really the positions, the priority positions for Utah, where they've got to go into it and find a guy that can come in at each of those spots and help them. I think that's going to be a key for Utah. They've allocated about 10 to 15 spots, for transfer portal additions, And I think Utah is pretty optimistic that they can, find some difference makers. They've always been pretty good at finding guys that can come in and help them through the transfer portal. There's obviously been some misses along the way as well, but I think Utah's pretty optimistic that they can find some difference makers, which will help them and their class too, because now you factor in, it's not just high school recruiting, it's now transfer portal recruiting. They're currently sitting on the 38th overall class, according to 24/7 Sports. I think Utah feels they can get to top 30 maybe, given, however these transfer portal additions shake out.
And I really believe, too, when you bring up the class rankings, I feel like this year's kind of a throw-it-out year, not necessarily for Utah, but the Big 12 at large, because I think there was just such a newness and learning everyone phase. Once you start to get in the heart of this league, you're going to have to consistently be a top 40 recruiter to win this league and be in the mix annually. You can always maybe win it one-off. Like this league has always produced some wild outcomes, and we're going to see it this week with Arizona State, the preseason number 16 pick. But I think if you want to consistently and emerge still as the top program year after year, you got to consistently, at a minimum, be top 40 recruiter. 50, yes, you can always maybe every 5 years, break through and have a championship season. But I think that still does matter.
Yeah.
Putting together those big classes that win big, and on, because this is the time of the year when no one talks about it as much right now, but these are the classes that piece together championship runs. And I think both these teams want to really still have their foundation be with the high school ranks.
Let's look at the Big 12. I think that's an important topic to hit on, right? With BYU and Utah in the Big 12, how has the rest of the conference shaken out? You're looking at the top class in the Big 12, TCU. Next up, Baylor, Kansas State, third, Utah or Colorado, fourth, and then Utah, fifth. To round it out the rest of the way, you've got West Virginia, sixth, Arizona State, Houston, Texas Tech, Arizona, Iowa State, BYU, Oklahoma State, Kansas, Cincinnati, and UCF coming up 16th.
See, UCF, no surprise there at 16 with a coaching change going on with Gus Malzahn. It'll be interesting to see if the rumblings of maybe Lincoln Riley.
No way. There's no way.
I can't believe that.
I mean, maybe USC is like, hey, we'll pay 60% of the buyout. You guys get the rest.
Hey,
you can have them.
And Lincoln Riley has been known to. Seems like he likes the easier path.
He sure does. He's missed old Kyle Whittingham.
He doesn't like the tough path. I will say TCU, they have tons of potential to be really good. I honestly think TCU and the right coach at UCF, because of their area code, and Houston too, they are just programs because of location where they can naturally build top 25 recruiting classes annually, potentially. Yep. BYU and Utah, they got to have a few breaks. They got to get the Jerome Mileses every once in a while to have that breakthrough as a top 25 class. And that hasn't. But if you can still be a top 40 recruiting program, you're going to be in that championship mix. But I love TCU's class. They had a lot of momentum in their bye week a few weeks ago, and they're actually translating it to on-field success. Sonny Dykes has kind of overcome the early season struggles, and seems like they got some real positive buzz heading into the bowl season. They're going to be a team to watch, I think, in 2025, and because a lot of these players could be real impact players for TCU.
Dave Aranda, too. Turn the tide on his season at Baylor, right? And I think that's impressive. And it started on the recruiting trail even before they got it going.
They pay players. That was shirts.
That's what it was, right? So they've got a good incoming class. They've got 5 4-star kids coming in. And like you said, Mitch, with those programs being in Fort Worth, Waco, Houston, they have a lot of access to the talent. It's going to be important for Utah and for BYU to maintain as much as they can in the state of Utah, but given the access now that they have to the state of Texas, they really have an opportunity to mine that state for as much talent as possible. That's going to be the key for them moving forward, I think, as well.
I do think long-term in the state of Utah, though, because of we're not going to – this isn't, CNBC. We're not going to be like a financial broadcast here. But because of the economy, people moving in, you're seeing NIL. Young people, the commitment to football, where a lot of states on the West Coast are not as committed to football at the youth level. This state could really be a hotbed. Maybe not Texas level ever. You're probably never going to get to that.
Yeah.
Where you're having these farm systems in 7th grade. But you could get to a point where maybe this is a top 6 or 7 state. And we've seen the numbers per capita. I mean, as far as NFL producing states, I mean, this is a great state for NFL talent.
It really is.
So I just
that per capita stat is fantastic. I love that you referenced that, Mitch.
It's a go-to. Well, Jeremiah Jensen brings it up on he covers everything locals in the NFL. He's got that nailed down.
The more we talk about the per capita stat, we need to teach people about it.
It's spot on. But I think that. But I do believe that this state. And getting to a level where maybe it can be where you just take care of the home state, you're naturally a top 35, 40 recruiter. And then you can go step out of your comfort zone and go into Texas, get maybe a 4-star because you got those Big 12 ties, and then suddenly you're talking about a top 25 class.
And not only in terms of population here in the state, right? The state of Utah is growing. It's all of that. But the football development in so many different ways, you're seeing more football trainers.
Yes.
You're seeing more athletic trainers. You're seeing the development of the sport itself improve over the last 5 years, and it's only going to continue to grow and expand in that realm as well. So yeah, I'm with you there, Mitch. I think it's only up for Utah from here. It's proven to produce NFL talent, and I think the amount of quality talent coming out of the state is only going to continue to grow.
I mean, I just think of signing days. I mean, growing up as a kid, I loved signing day. I was in a weird enough family where my dad would check me out of school for signing day, and we would go down to some luncheon and have signing day. But like, it was rare when you'd have guys from Utah, like you maybe get 3 guys. Now it's like there's so many players, and I just feel like that's only going to continue to grow for the state of Utah moving forward. I think that's a good thing for BYU and Utah because as long as there's a 12-team playoff and as long as there's still access, even though the committee doesn't like this league, as long as there's access, there's still always that belief, that hope that you're going to be playing for a national title. And I think that's where days like today give you that hope and belief that your team is going to have that chance to break through and eventually get there.
That's what it's all about, Mitch. It's all about that playoff.
Oh, it's going to be an amazing offseason, Steve. We're going to have it all covered on KSLSports.com, the KSL Sports app. Download the KSL Sports app. Follow Steve, his work on KSL Sports and the X. Follow his podcast, the Utah Blockcast. Follow my work, Cougar Tracks, and on KSLSports.com. We'll talk to you next time.